She returned to London with no title, no husband, and nothing left to prove. But one man, the man who once failed her, would learn too late that her soul was his undoing. Chapter 1. The Wound. London had been unkind to Eleanor Whitford long before it learned to mock her name. It began on an afternoon that should have been ordinary quiet, windless, the type of day where the sky was so pale it looked powdered with chalk. She had been 23 then, hopeful, certain that life would unfold with predictable grace. Marriage, perhaps. Purpose? Certainly. She had possessed that dangerous thing, expectation. By 40, expectation had vanished. It had been stripped from her, peeled away slowly like wallpaper, aging in the corners of a forgotten room. And yet, the wound remained. Eleanor sat in her late father's library, the air thick with the scent of dust and lavender oil, his favorite, the one he dabbed on letters he sent abroad. The fire burned low, almost resentful in its glow. She traced a fingertip along the spine of an old atlas, her thoughts drifting to the memory she least wished to hold but could never release. The last day she ever allowed herself to trust. A woman of your age ought to accept reality. Her stepmother, Lady Catriona Whitford, had said that morning with a sweetness sharp enough to wound. No gentleman wants a woman who thinks too much, or expects too much. Eleanor had said nothing. She never gave Catriona the satisfaction of reaction. But the words had landed on skin already thin, already bruised by years of quiet battles. Her stepsister, Lavinia, had added with a laugh that tinkled like broken glass, "Men marry women who make them look good, not women who ask questions, or have opinions." Opinions. Eleanor had been born with too many of those. But the cruelest wound had not come from her stepmother, nor her stepsister. It had come from him, Adrian Hawthorne, the Duke of Everleigh. A man carved out of winter and shadow, a man she once believed incapable of cruelty until he proved otherwise. 17 years earlier, she had thought him gentle. Reserved, yes, difficult, certainly. But gentle in the way lightning seems gentle before it strikes. Quiet, mesmerizing, a force waiting for its moment. He had visited often then, under the guise of business with her father. But Eleanor saw things others didn't. The way he lingered at the door, the way he asked about her readings, the way he softened only for her. She had been foolish enough to think it meant something, until the season of her 23rd year, when Catriona announced to London that Eleanor had pursued the Duke, that she had thrown herself at him in desperation, that she had tried, oh, the scandalous word, to trap him. It was a lie so brazen, it shocked even the vicious matrons of the ton. But lies, repeated by the powerful, become social truth. And Adrian said nothing, not a denial, not a word of defense, not even a glance in her direction to acknowledge the storm swallowing her reputation. Silence. His silence had been her execution. Within weeks, invitations stopped. Prospects vanished. Whispers multiplied. Her stepmother triumphed, and Eleanor learned, painfully, that silence could wound more deeply than any declaration. She left London soon after, retreating to the countryside with nothing but books, grief, and the quiet certainty that she would never again allow herself to depend on a man, least of all, a duke, capable of such betrayal. Now, 17 years later, she stared at the cracked leather of the atlas, her breath unsteady as the past clawed at her ribs. 40. That was the number society mocked her with now. The word the ton, used like a dagger. 40. And unmarried. 40. And unwanted. 40. And irrelevant. But they hadn't seen her rebuild herself in the silence Adrian created. They hadn't seen her spend 17 years teaching young girls to read when no governess would take them. They hadn't seen her travel through Europe with nothing but a satchel and a notebook, seeking knowledge rather than approval. They hadn't seen her grow. No, they only saw the absence of a ring, the absence of a man, but not the presence she had built within herself. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Whitford? Her maid, Alice, peeked inside. Forgive me, but a letter has arrived from London. Eleanor's stomach tightened. London, a place she vowed never to return to, unless necessity forced her hand. She opened the envelope slowly, expecting another demand from her stepmother, perhaps a financial one, perhaps a cruel reminder of her status. But the handwriting was not Catriona's. It was elegant, masculine, familiar. Her fingers trembled. Not him. It couldn't be him. She forced herself to read. Miss Whitford, it is with great urgency that I write to you. Matters concerning your father's estate have resurfaced, matters in which your presence is not only requested, but required. Please return to London at your earliest convenience. Lord Westmere. Lord Westmere. Her father's old solicitor. Not the Duke. Good. And yet her hands still shook, as if some part of her body, traitorous, sentimental, had hoped for a different signature. She folded the letter, her composure settling like frost over warm ground. So she would return to London, return to the city that mocked her, return to the ballroom where her name was once shredded into whispers. But this time, she was not the fragile girl she had been. She was Eleanor Whitford, 40, unwed, unbroken. Still, beneath her determination, something raw pulsed like an old bruise. A memory of the man who had once held her gaze so intently it felt like a promise, then abandoned her to ruin. Adrian Hawthorne, the most desired duke in England. The man who would soon discover that the girl he shattered had grown into a woman he had no right to hope for. Eleanor closed the atlas. "Prepare my bags," she said softly. Alice blinked. "Miss? Are you certain?" "Yes," Eleanor whispered, her throat tight. "Let London mock me again. Let them whisper. Let the Duke see what he lost." She stood tall, the firelight glowing against her profile, like the first breath of dawn. London had wounded her once, but she was returning, and this time she carried her power with her. Chapter 2: Return and Collision. The road into London always felt narrower in winter, narrower, darker, lined with memories Eleanor had no wish to revisit. Her carriage wheels rumbled over cobblestone as dusk descended, smearing the sky with violet and pale rose. Gas lamps flickered to life one by one, haloing the city in a soft amber glow. London looked gentler than she remembered, but she knew better. This was a city of polished cruelty, smiling while it counted your cracks. Eleanor drew the curtain back, watching faces blur past the window. Milliners closing their shops, gentlemen striding briskly, ladies wrapped in fur-lined cloaks, whispering secrets into the cold. It struck her, sharply and unexpectedly, that she had once belonged here. Or rather, she had once believed she did. The carriage stopped before the townhouse she had rented, a modest but dignified residence tucked off Grosvenor Square. Nothing lavish, nothing ostentatious, but hers, her space, her return on her terms. Alice helped her step down. "Shall I start the fire, miss?" "Yes, Alice. And see that the study is prepared. I intend to meet Lord Westmere first thing in the morning." Alice nodded and hurried inside. Eleanor exhaled, pressing a gloved hand to her ribs. She had prepared herself for London. She had armored her heart. But standing here, the air stinging her cheeks, she felt something else creeping in. Dread. Because she knew he was somewhere nearby. Adrian Hawthorne, Duke of Everleigh, master of Everleigh House, the man society worshipped and feared, lived only 3 streets away. And London, with its insufferable predictability, had a talent for throwing people together before they were ready. The next morning dawned cold and bright. Eleanor, dressed in a deep green walking gown, her hair braided loosely and pinned beneath a velvet bonnet. She refused to dress for spectacle. She had nothing to prove to the ton. Her carriage delivered her to Lord Westmere's offices, tucked between Parliament Street and Whitehall. She entered, trying to ignore the slight tremor beneath her ribs. Lord Westmere rose immediately upon seeing her. "Miss Whitford," he said warmly. "My dear girl, my apologies, my dear lady. 17 years has done nothing to lessen your poise." She smiled, allowing his kindness to wash over her like a balm. He had always treated her with more respect than her own family. He gestured to the high-backed chair across from his desk. "I am afraid the matter is serious," he said once she sat. "Your father's estate. It appears it was mishandled after his passing." Eleanor froze. Mishandled how? Land holdings your father meant to leave in your name were instead transferred to your stepmother. Her pulse flickered. Catriona, of course. And now, he continued, a dispute has arisen regarding ownership of a certain coastal property. The matter must be settled publicly. In London. By you. Eleanor inhaled slowly, absorbing the blow. Her father's land, her inheritance, the one thing she thought she still possessed. And my stepmother's intentions? Eleanor asked quietly. Lord Westmere sighed. She seeks to sell the property. Eleanor stiffened. That land, those cliffs overlooking the sea, had been her father's sanctuary, the one place she'd felt truly seen as a child. To lose it would be to lose the last piece of him. She would not allow it. I will fight it, she said, her voice calm but steely. I expected no less, Westmere nodded. You have your father's resolve, Eleanor. A rare warmth touched her chest. They rose. She shook his hand and prepared to leave. But fate, ever mischievous, had a different plan. As she stepped into the hallway, footsteps echoed from the opposite end, measured, steady, commanding. A tall figure rounded the corner. Her breath left her body. Adrian Hawthorne, the Duke of Everleigh. 17 years had changed him, but not diminished him. If anything, he had become more striking, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in deep navy. His dark hair slightly tousled, as if by an impatient hand. His jaw was sharper, his expression carved from quiet suffering. His blue-gray eyes lifted and collided with hers. Time fractured. He stopped walking. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her gloves, her spine instinctively straightening. His lips parted, barely, as if he'd forgotten the next breath he was supposed to take. Miss Whitford, he said softly, too softly for a man known for iron and distance. Her name in his voice, it felt like a memory returning uninvited. She inclined her head with cool dignity. Your Grace. A flicker, something like pain, crossed his eyes. He had expected coldness. He had earned it. Forgive my intrusion, he said, stepping aside. I did not realize. Nor did I, she replied, her tone polite but distant. Excuse me. I have business to attend to. She moved to pass him, but he shifted instinctively, unintentionally blocking her path by a fraction of an inch. Not aggressively, not knowingly, but like a man who had been starving and suddenly found water. Eleanor, his voice cracked. She froze. Not Miss Whitford. Eleanor. She turned her gaze on him slowly, carefully. Yes, Your Grace. His throat bobbed. He lowered his voice. I did not expect you to return. Her chin lifted. And yet, here I am. He exhaled a shaky, regret-laden sound. May we speak? She almost laughed. Speak? Now? After 17 years of silence? There is nothing for us to discuss, she said quietly. The line was clean, sharp, unmistakable. But Adrian looked as if she had struck him. He took a small step back, as though giving space he should have given her 17 years ago. I see, he murmured. And then something astonishing. He bowed. Not the polite dip of a duke acknowledging a lady, a real bow. Head lowered, shoulders curved. A gesture of humility so unexpected Eleanor's breath faltered. Good day, Miss Whitford, he said, voice strained. And, welcome home. She walked past him, refusing to let the tremor in her chest show. But she felt his gaze follow her until the heavy door closed behind her. Outside, the cold air slapped her cheeks. She inhaled deeply, needing the sting. She hated the way her body remembered him, the way her heart reacted before her mind intervened, the way her name spoken softly by him still carried weight. I did not expect you to return. The truth was, she had not expected him to look at her like that. Like a man seeing the sunrise after years of darkness. No, she would not be undone by a single glance. She climbed into her carriage, exhaling shakily. The driver snapped the reins. As the wheels began to roll, Eleanor whispered to herself, I am not the girl he left behind, and I will not become her again. But deep inside, beneath layers of resolve and years of healing, something fragile trembled awake. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, she had seen in his eyes not indifference, but yearning. Chapter 3. The Duke's Secret Regret. Adrian Hawthorne had never feared a woman in his life. Not dowagers. Not scorned mistresses. Not ambitious debutantes sharpened into weapons by their mothers. But Eleanor Whitford, the woman he had wronged, the woman he had watched, walk past him without flinching. The woman whose eyes no longer held softness for him. She terrified him. He sat alone in his study at Everley House that evening, sleeves rolled up, cravat discarded, the fire casting gold against the strained lines of his face. Papers lay scattered before him, but he hadn't read a word of them. His mind was trapped in the hallway of Westmere's office, in the moment her gaze met his and stripped him bare. 17 years of silence, and he still felt like the man who could not speak when it mattered. He pressed a hand to his forehead. How could he possibly explain to her that the very silence which destroyed her had nearly destroyed him as well? A soft tap sounded at his door. "Your Grace?" his steward asked. "Shall I bring supper?" "No." Adrian's voice was low, raw. "Leave me." The door closed. Adrian rose abruptly, moving across the study to a tall cabinet tucked behind a velvet curtain. Few knew it existed. Fewer still knew what it held. He unlocked it with a small brass key worn smooth from years of use. Inside were rows of boxes, letters, folded newspapers, and one small portrait frame turned face down. His past, his regrets, his failures. Most men hid affairs, scandals, gambling debts. He hid her. He lifted one of the boxes and opened it. Inside lay dozens of letters, every one written in his hand. None had ever reached her. His throat tightened violently as he picked up the first. "Eleanor, forgive me. I must explain. Unsent." Another. "I heard what your stepmother said. I did not know how to stop it without making matters worse." Unsent. Another. "You deserved better than my silence. You deserved protection. You deserved truth. I failed you." Unsent. And the one that had cost him a night of sleep and a decade of guilt. "If I speak now, it will ruin you further. If I remain silent, it ruins you differently. I have no choice, and yet I cannot forgive myself for making it." Unsent. He dropped the letter, breath shattering. Why hadn't he sent them? Because Catriona Whitford had threatened her. No one knew that part of the story, not Eleanor, not Westmere, not a soul. She had found Adrian alone one evening when whispers were reaching their peak. Catriona, with her serpent smile and sugar-sweet words. "If you defend her," she'd whispered, "if you deny my story, if you even lift a finger to salvage her reputation, I will destroy her entirely." And she had. Catriona held influence, connections, and secrets Eleanor did not even know she possessed. So Adrian did what seemed the only way to protect Eleanor from total social annihilation. He remained silent, the greatest mistake of his life. He had lived every day since knowing Eleanor would never forgive him and that she had every right not to. He sank onto the leather chair and dragged a hand through his hair. Her face 40, dignified, striking in a way youth could never be haunted him now. She had looked at him with the calm of a woman who no longer needed him. But he had never stopped needing her. He opened another drawer. Newspaper clippings filled it, articles spanning years, collected in secret. Miss Eleanor Whitford teaches reading to village children. Miss Whitford travels to Vienna to study botanical illustration. Lecture given by Miss Whitford. The role of literature in women's education. He traced every headline with reverence. He had watched her grow from afar, unable to approach her, unable to repair what he had broken, but unable to let go. He closed the drawer quietly, as if afraid to disturb her memory. Then he unlocked another box, the most painful one of all. Inside was a small watercolor painting. Eleanor, age 23, standing beneath an oak tree, sunlight stitched through her hair. She had painted it herself, her style unmistakable. It was the last piece she completed before she fled London. She had left it behind in her father's old study when her stepmother forced her out. Adrian had found it. He had kept it. For 17 years, he turned the portrait face up, and the sight of her young, hopeful expression broke him anew. "I am sorry," he whispered to the quiet room. The words came out strangled. "I am so damn sorry." No one had ever heard the Duke of Everleigh apologize. Not even the men he'd challenged in duels. Not even the king. But for her, he would kneel. He already had, in ways no one saw. Anonymous funds sent to support her teaching work. A donated building in Dover that she never knew came from him. The publisher who agreed to print her essays at his insistence. He never signed his name. She would have despised the charity. She deserved success born of her own brilliance, not his guilt. Still, he helped in shadows, because that was the only place he was allowed to exist in her life. Until today, until she looked at him in that hallway with cool poise that sliced him open. Until she said, "There is nothing for us to discuss." He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. There was something they needed to discuss. Everything. The truth. The lies. The silence. His regret. Her pain. How he had loved her quietly, fiercely, disastrously from the moment he first met her. Love that had been forbidden then. Love that was impossible now. Love that still somehow lived inside him. He pressed the heel of his hand to his eyes. He needed to see her again. Speak to her. Explain. Beg, if he must. But how does a man apologize for ruining a woman's life? How does a duke lower himself enough to earn forgiveness from the only person whose opinion mattered to him? He lifted the last unsent letter. "If fate ever brings you back to London, I will find the courage I lacked. I will speak the truth. And if you never forgive me, I shall still consider it an honor to have known you. A.H." He folded it slowly. Fate had brought her back. Courage he would have to find. But forgiveness? He doubted he deserved even the hope of it. Downstairs, the clock chimed midnight. Adrian stood, exhaling deeply, and closed the cabinet doors with a whisper of finality. Tomorrow, society would gather at Lady Farnsworth's winter salon, a grand event attended by every influential person in London. Eleanor would likely be there. And so would he. His jaw clenched. He would not hide behind silence again. He would not let her walk past him untouched. Tomorrow, he would begin to undo the ruin he caused. But for now, he allowed himself one moment of weakness. He whispered her name into the empty room, a prayer and a punishment. Eleanor. Chapter 4. Rising Tension. Lady Farnsworth's winter salon boasted the same merciless splendor Eleanor remembered from her youth. Crystal chandeliers glowed like constellations suspended from silk blue ceilings. Firelight shimmered across polished marble floors. Conversations fluttered through the air like jeweled birds. The crush of the ton, London's most self-satisfied spectators, stood ready to dissect every gown, every glance, every whisper. Eleanor paused at the entrance. She could feel eyes turning already. 40, unwed, returned. They smelled scandal the way wolves smelled blood. Alice whispered, "Miss, we may turn back if—" "No," Eleanor murmured. "Let them look." She entered with a composure so graceful it startled even her. Her emerald gown swept the floor softly. Her chin lifted. Her posture regal despite the old dread coiling beneath her ribs. She had come tonight to speak with Lady Farnsworth about her father's disputed land, a woman with enough influence to sway the committee handling the claim. Eleanor's cause required strategy, not fear. Still, it was impossible not to feel the familiar prickle of humiliation. As faces, she recognized faces that once pretended to adore her, turned whisper sharp. "Is that Eleanor Whitford? 40. Is she not?" Imagine returning after so long. Without a husband? She pretended she did not hear. But she did. Every syllable. Lady Farnsworth welcomed her with warmth and surprising affection. "My dear Miss Whitford, you look radiant." The older woman squeezed her hand. "You must call on me. This week we have matters to discuss regarding your claim. I am deeply grateful. I will come at your earliest convenience." "Good girl." Lady Farnsworth smiled. "Now enjoy the evening. You have been missed." Missed? A word Eleanor had not expected to hear in London. She turned to step away and collided gently with a tall figure. "Oh, forgive me." "No forgiveness is necessary," came a voice rich with cultured warmth. "It is I who should apologize for obstructing your path." Eleanor looked up. A striking gentleman with dark hair tied neatly at the nape, warm amber eyes, and an expression of genuine delight stood before her. He bowed elegantly. "Lord Sebastian Alden," he introduced, "recently returned from the Ottoman court. And you, I believe, are Miss Eleanor Whitford." Eleanor blinked. "You know me? Know you?" His smile deepened. "Miss Whitford, I have read your essays on women's education. I attended your lecture in Vienna 2 years ago." She stared. He continued with soft admiration. "I have long hoped to meet the woman who wrote with such clarity and such courage." Her heart gave an unfamiliar flutter. Most men never noticed her mind. This man seemed dazzled by it. "You honor me, Lord Alden," she said, regaining composure. "I confess I did not imagine anyone here read my work." "Oh, they do not," he replied lightly, "but I do. And I have traveled far enough to know brilliance when I encounter it." Heat crept up her neck. Before she could answer, music swelled as the orchestra began a waltz. Lord Alden extended his hand. "Would you grant me the honor of this dance, Miss Whitford?" She hesitated, not out of shyness, but caution. She had sworn never to let London's glittering rooms determine her worth. But Lord Alden's expression held no mockery, no pity, no calculation, only sincere admiration. And she had spent too long refusing joy out of fear. She placed her hand in his. "I would be delighted." As they danced, Eleanor felt a forgotten lightness stir in her. Lord Alden was an excellent partner, steady, attentive, speaking to her as though they were equals in mind and spirit. "You have a rare intellect, Miss Whitford," he murmured. "London never deserved you." She laughed softly. "Flattery, Lord Alden?" "Truth," he corrected gently. Their steps glided effortlessly, drawing curious stares from guests. "Who is dancing with her? Is he serious? Why her?" Eleanor forced herself not to care. Lord Alden leaned closer. "Might I ask, will you remain in London long?" "That depends." "On what?" "On battles I must fight," she answered quietly. His brow furrowed with concern. "If I may be of assistance, in any capacity, you need only ask." Such a simple offer, such unexpected kindness. Her chest tightened. The dance ended. He bowed over her hand, his lips brushing the air above her glove, not touching, yet far more intimate than a kiss. "I should like to speak with you again tonight," he said. Her lips curved. "Perhaps." Lord Alden smiled slow, warm, appreciative, and stepped back. Eleanor inhaled deeply, steadying herself. It had been a long time since a man admired her, not despite her age, but because her age had made her interesting. She almost turned to find a refreshment, until the air shifted. Cool, tense, electric, her pulse stilled. She did not need to turn to know he was behind her. Adrian, the Duke of Everleigh. She felt him before she saw him, his presence, unmistakable in the subtle hush that fell around them. A ripple of awareness swept through the room as society's golden idol stepped into the circle of candlelight. Eleanor turned slowly. He stood only a few paces away, watching her with an expression so raw it startled her. His gaze flicked to where Lord Alden had touched her hand, not with judgment, but with unmistakable jealousy. He bowed slightly. "Miss Whitford." His voice, normally smooth with aristocratic control, sounded strained. "Your Grace." She returned a colder, more distant bow. "I see you have found pleasant company." His tone was mild. Too mild. It cracked at the edges. "Yes," she replied. "Lord Alden is both gracious and intelligent. Qualities I have long wished for in polite company." A muscle tightened in Adrian's jaw. "Indeed." He paused, struggling. "I wonder. May I request a moment alone with you?" "No." The refusal shocked him. "I beg your pardon?" "No, Your Grace," she repeated calmly. "I am not at your disposal. Not anymore." She moved to step past him, but Adrian spoke quickly, desperately, though he tried to hide it. "Eleanor, please." The sound of her name uncontrolled, aching, made her stop. She turned her head slightly. His voice dropped. "I only wish to talk. And I wished for many things, she said quietly. 17 years ago. He flinched. He actually flinched. Before he could speak again, Lord Alden returned, offering her a glass of champagne. Miss Whitford, he said warmly, Lady Farnsworth wishes to introduce you to several academicians. Eleanor accepted the glass. Thank you, Lord Alden. Adrian's nostrils flared the slightest fraction. Lord Alden extended his arm. Shall we? Eleanor took it, and Adrian watched helpless as she walked away at another man's side. Hours later, after conversations, introductions, and a surprising number of respectful compliments, Eleanor stepped onto Lady Farnsworth's terrace for air. Moonlight draped the stone floor in silver. Frost kissed the balustrade. She breathed deeply. Enjoying the evening? Came Lord Alden's voice as he joined her. I am, she admitted. You have made it surprisingly pleasant. He smiled. I hope to continue doing so. She felt heat stir in her chest, a warmth she hadn't felt in decades. But before she could reply, the terrace door opened again. Adrian stepped out, eyes immediately finding hers. He froze as he saw Lord Alden beside her. The tension between the two men ignited like flint. Alden spoke first. Your Grace. Lord Alden. Adrian's voice was cool steel. You seem to have taken a particular interest in Miss Whitford. And why should I not? Alden replied evenly. Her intellect is unmatched. Her presence, refreshing. Her conversation, a pleasure. Adrian's jaw clenched. I am aware. Eleanor looked between them. Her heart caught somewhere between fury and something else. Lord Alden turned to her. Would you allow me the honor of calling on you tomorrow? Adrian inhaled sharply. Eleanor lifted her chin. Yes, she said softly. I would like that very much. Something shattered behind Adrian's eyes. He bowed stiffly, painfully. Then I shall take my leave, he murmured. He walked away before either of them could speak. But Eleanor saw at the devastation he tried so hard to hide. And for the first time, she did not feel powerless because of him. She felt powerful. Chapter 5. Public Confrontation. The following evening, Duchess Montclair hosted her famed winter gathering, a sprawling display of wealth and power where reputations rose and shattered in a single whispered sentence. Eleanor had attended such events as a girl, clinging to hope like a lifeline. Tonight, she attended as a woman who knew precisely how fragile hope could be. She arrived early, accompanied by Lord Alden, whose carriage, whose reputation, whose steady presence at her side instantly silenced the snide murmurs that had followed her the night before. If the ton respected anything, it was association. Yet Eleanor felt a prickle beneath her skin, a warning she could not name. The ballroom glowed with golden firelight and diamond-bright chandeliers. Satin gowns swirled like petals. Violins lifted soft, aching melodies that drifted through the air like perfume. Eleanor kept her chin high. She would not be intimidated by a room full of people who measured worth by proximity to power. But as she walked, conversations fell into unnatural hushes behind her. Not admiration, not curiosity. Something darker, something planned. Lord Alden noticed her tension. If at any time you wish to withdraw, say the word. Thank you, she replied quietly. But I will not leave before I accomplish what I came for. And what is that? To be seen, she said softly. On my own terms. Alden's answering smile was warm. Then, allow me to stand beside you as you do. Her gratitude shimmered beneath her ribs, but as they approached the center of the ballroom, Eleanor's blood chilled. There near the stairwell stood her stepmother, Lady Catriona Whitford, draped in silver silk like a serpent preparing to shed its skin. Her daughter, Lavinia, stood beside her, smirking, eyes glittering with the kind of anticipation that only ever preceded cruelty. Catriona's voice rose just loud enough to carry. My goodness. Eleanor Whitford returned from exile. How brave. Laughter rippled among the ladies around her. A few gentlemen looked away, uncomfortable. Lord Alden stiffened beside Eleanor. You are under no obligation to endure this. But Eleanor stepped forward calm, unshaken, refusing to retreat. Lady Whitford, she said, perfectly composed, I see London's talent for dramatics remains unchanged. Oh, Eleanor. Catriona pressed a hand to her chest theatrically. I would say I'm surprised to see you, but one does hear that desperation makes a woman bold. A few gasps fluttered, some hidden whispers thrilled. Lavinia chimed in, smile sweet as poison. To come back at 40, unmarried, it is quite the accomplishment. Though I fear society will not be as forgiving as you hope. Eleanor's chin rose. Thankfully, society's forgiveness is not something I require. But Catriona was not finished. No? She asked with feigned innocence. Then perhaps you have returned in search of a husband? Or simply to remind us that time has been less generous to some than others? The cruelty was surgical, and the crowd was watching, waiting. Lord Alden moved to speak, but Eleanor touched his arm lightly. No, she whispered. Let me. She looked her stepmother in the eye. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet but devastating. I am not here to reclaim a place in your world, Lady Whitford. I am here to reclaim what was stolen, my father's land, and my dignity, which you failed to destroy despite your best efforts. A stunned silence fell. Catriona's face blanched just slightly. Lavinia faltered. Eleanor pressed on. You underestimated me then. You underestimate me still. That is your mistake to bear, not mine. Whispers burst instantly, some approving, some scandalized. Catriona's mask cracked. But before the tension snapped entirely, another voice, smooth, authoritative, cut through the air. Miss Whitford. Eleanor froze. Adrian Hawthorne had approached, and the entire ballroom shifted around him. He was breathtaking in black formal wear, his presence commanding enough to hush even the cruelest tongues. But his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were fixed solely on her. Your Grace, Catriona purred, eager to redirect attention. How fortunate that you join us now. We were just discussing. Adrian did not look at her. He looked at Eleanor. Only Eleanor. May I speak with you? He asked quietly, almost pleadingly. But Catriona, sensing an opportunity for humiliation, interjected. Oh, Your Grace, you needn't trouble yourself. Eleanor has no need for private discussions with powerful men. It would only revive old rumors. Laughter, sharp, vicious, a needle slipping under skin. Eleanor inhaled, drawing herself taller. Adrian's jaw tightened, fury flashing across his eyes. He turned to Catriona slowly, dangerously. Lady Whitford, he said, voice low and glacial, I am not in the habit of repeating myself, but you will leave Miss Whitford out of your petty theatrics. The crowd gasped. Catriona flushed crimson. Eleanor stepped forward. Your Grace. But then, the worst thing that could happen in such a delicate moment happened. A voice from the back, one of the matrons, known for her silver tongue and iron heart, called out. Did he not once reject her publicly? Why defend her now? The room erupted in murmurs. Catriona smirked. Lavinia exchanged gleeful glances with her friends. Adrian stiffened. And Eleanor saw at that momentary fracture, the old wound reopening. The Duke, being pulled again, between reputation and righteousness. He hesitated. Just a second. Barely that. But the hesitation cut deeper than any insult. Lord Alden immediately stepped forward, placing himself between Eleanor and the crowd. Enough, he said, voice steady. Miss Whitford owes none of you explanations, least of all those who thrive on manufactured scandal. His hand hovered near hers, protective, not possessive. The ballroom shifted. A few nodded. Some looked away in shame. Adrian remained silent. Eleanor's heart clenched. Again. History, repeating itself not as tragedy, but as insult. Adrian finally spoke, but too late, too gently. Eleanor, I only wished, but she shook her head once, the pain clean and dignified. Your silence is louder than your words, Your Grace. He froze. She turned to Lord Alden. Would you escort me to the terrace? I find I need air. With pleasure, Alden replied, offering his arm. Eleanor took it. This time, she didn't look back. But Adrian watched her walk away, a man carved hollow by his own hesitation. His hand trembled at his side, his breath unsteady. his regret a living, bleeding thing. Someone behind him whispered, "You see, she is better suited to Alden." And for the first time in his life, the Duke of Everleigh felt fear. Real, bone-deep fear. Not of losing reputation, not of facing scandal, but of losing her. Chapter 6. Revelation of Truth. The terrace was colder than she expected. Cold enough to sting. Cold enough to remind Eleanor that she was alive, and that pain could serve a purpose. She pressed her palms against the frost-flecked stone railing and inhaled deeply. Lord Alden stood beside her, not too close, not too far. "Shall I fetch your cloak?" he asked gently. "No," she said. "The cold is clarifying." He nodded, understanding more in her few words than most ever could. They stood in silence as the winter sky stretched above them, pale moonlight shimmering across the courtyard like spilled water. Inside the ballroom, music continued, oblivious, indulgent, irritating. But the door behind them opened again, and this time Eleanor did not need to turn. She felt him. Eleanor. Her name left his lips like an exhale torn from a wound. She did not face him. Lord Alden turned, his expression instantly sharpening. "Your Grace," he said, voice polite, but bearing an unmistakable warning. "Alden," Adrian replied, jaw tight. "I request a private moment." "With respect, Your Grace," Alden said calmly, "Miss Whitford need not speak with anyone she does not wish to." Eleanor closed her eyes. She could feel Adrian's tension sharp, restless, anguished. "Eleanor," he repeated, softer this time. "Please." She finally turned. The moon lit him in silver, making him look both regal and heartbreakingly human. "Lord Alden," she said, never looking away from Adrian, "may we have a moment?" Alden bowed. "Should you need me," he murmured, "I will be inside." Then, with one last warning glance at the Duke, he retreated through the terrace doors. Eleanor crossed her arms, spine straight, her dignity gathered like armor. Adrian swallowed hard. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You shouldn't thank me," she replied. "This conversation is 17 years overdue." He flinched. "Do you?" Her voice was calm, but sharp as crystal. "Because tonight, your hesitation made it very clear that history has taught you nothing." He took a breath. "Eleanor, I was caught off guard. And at 23? She cut in. "Were you caught off guard then as well? Is that why you said nothing while London shredded my name? Is that why you let my stepmother destroy my reputation? Or is it simply your nature to protect yourself first and let others burn for your silence?" The Duke of Everleigh, most feared man in London, looked shattered. His voice dropped. "I never meant to hurt you." "You did," she said, with the calm of a woman no longer begging for acknowledgement. "And you did it twice. Once, as a girl, and again, as a woman who owes you nothing." His breath trembled. "I came tonight to defend you," he insisted softly. "You came too late," she replied. "Just as you always do." He winced as if she'd struck him. For a moment neither spoke, the cold wind threading through the silence like a needle through cloth. Then Adrian said something she did not expect. "I was threatened." Eleanor blinked. "Threatened?" "Yes." He stepped closer, not touching, but unable to stand still. "Your stepmother came to me the night the rumors began. She told me that if I denied her accusations, if I defended you publicly, she would ruin you entirely." "She already ruined me," Eleanor said bitterly. "You do not understand," he replied urgently. "She had letters, documents, secrets about your father she threatened to twist into scandal. She planned to accuse you of trying to seduce me for inheritance. She meant to disgrace you beyond repair, permanently." Eleanor's breath caught sharp, involuntary. "She said," he continued, voice shaking, "if you speak on her behalf, I will leave her nothing to return to." Eleanor staggered back a step. Memories slammed into her. Catriona throwing her from her home. Catriona selling her belongings. Catriona making sure no respectable household would hire her. "You knew," Eleanor whispered, voice breaking. "You knew what she was capable of." "Yes," Adrian said, tortured. and I believed silence was the only way to shield you from complete ruin. I thought, if I let the scandal die quietly, you could rebuild elsewhere. I thought I was protecting you." She let out a soft, devastated sound, neither laugh nor sob, something raw and fragile. "Protecting me," she repeated. "By abandoning me?" His eyes glistened. "I did not abandon you," his voice cracked. "I watched. I tried secretly to lessen the damage. The anonymous donations to your school? The building in Dover? The publishers who took your work? Eleanor? Stop." Her command froze him. "You do not get to list your secret charity as if it erases your silence," she said fiercely. "You do not get to claim you were protecting me when the result was the same. I was humiliated, cast out, mocked, alone." He stepped closer, pain etched into every line of his face. "I know," he whispered. "I know. And I have lived with that knowledge every day. I have wanted to apologize every day. But the longer I waited, the more impossible the words became." Eleanor breathed in, deeply, painfully. "And tonight?" she asked. "Tonight you had the chance to do differently. To speak, to defend, to stand with me." He closed his eyes, agony flickering. "I hesitated," he admitted. "Out of fear, not fear of the ton, but fear of hurting you again. Fear of stepping in where I was not wanted." Her voice softened just barely. "You are afraid," she said, "of the wrong things." He opened his eyes. "Eleanor," he breathed. "I never stopped." "No." Her hand lifted, stopping him mid-sentence. "You do not get to say that," she whispered. "Not now. Not yet. Not until I decide if your words hold weight or if they are just another way for you to soothe your conscience." He bowed his head. She continued, voice steady. "You hurt me because you were silent. You hurt me again because you hesitated. If you want forgiveness, if you want anything from me, you will earn it through action, not sentiment." His jaw trembled. "Then tell me how." "You will figure that out," she replied softly. "If you truly wish to." He lifted his gaze, helpless and reverent. "And if Lord Alden offers you his hand?" he asked in a broken whisper. "If he gives you what you deserve, what I failed to give you?" She paused. For a moment, her expression gentled. Then she spoke the words that cut him cleanly. "Then that will be your consequence, your grace." He let out a small, strangled breath. Half pain, half understanding. She turned away. "Good night, Adrian." Her use of his name was not softness. It was closure. It was a beginning. It was a challenge. He watched her walk back toward the ballroom, moonlight catching the frost in her hair like a halo of winter. And the Duke of Everleigh, once the most composed man in England, dropped to the terrace railing and braced himself with both hands, breathing as though he'd just been struck. Because he realized something with devastating clarity. He had not lost her 17 years ago. He was losing her now. End of Chapter 6. Micro cliffhanger. The truth is out. Wounds are exposed. And the Duke now stands at a crossroads. Change or lose her to a better man. Chapter 7. The Rival's Offer. The days following the Duchess Montclair's gathering unfolded like a series of tests. For Eleanor, for Adrian, for the version of herself who had once believed love meant suffering. London, as ever, delighted in its own gossip. Word spread swiftly. The disgraced spinster had returned, and not only had she returned, she had danced, spoken, and walked with Lord Sebastian Alden as though she had every right to belong. Because she did. Eleanor's mornings were spent at Lord Westmere's office, examining documents pertaining to her father's coastal property, piecing together years of quiet theft. The afternoons were devoted to planning her lectures, a small series invited by Lady Farnsworth, who believed London might tolerate the novelty of a woman speaking about education, so long as she did it beautifully. It was in the afternoons that Lord Alden became a fixture. He called with books, with maps, with letters of recommendation from scholars abroad. He introduced her to a small circle of thinkers who met weekly in a private salon to discuss philosophy, politics, and literature. In that quiet, book-filled room, filled with the scratch of pens and low voices, Eleanor felt something almost like home. It was on a mist-soft afternoon, a week after the confrontation on the terrace, that the question she had been avoiding finally took shape. Lord Alden arrived at her townhouse promptly at 3 o'clock, as he always did, punctual, not from rigid formality, but from respect. Alice announced him with the faintest of smiles. The servants liked him. They liked how he asked after their health, how he did not look through them. Lord Alden, Eleanor greeted, rising from the writing desk in her small drawing room. Miss Whitford, he replied, bowing with easy grace. I hope I do not intrude. You have yet to intrude once, she said. Please, sit. He settled opposite her, placing a slim leather folder on the small table between them. Before we discuss the matter I came for, he began, I want you to know that I attended your talk yesterday. Eleanor blinked. You did not inform me you were present. Had I done so, he said lightly, you might have felt watched. I wanted only to listen. Her cheeks warmed. And? Did you find it tolerable? If your intention was to make half the room deeply uncomfortable and the other half quietly transformed, he replied, then you succeeded perfectly. A reluctant smile tugged at her mouth. You flatter me, my lord. I assure you, Miss Whitford, he said, eyes earnest. If I were in the habit of flattering women, London would know far more of me than it does. Their shared laughter eased some of the tightness in her chest. He opened the leather folder with unhurried ceremony. I have been giving thought to your situation, he said. Not merely the inheritance dispute, but your work, your writing, your teaching, your lectures. She grew wary. My work is not a burden, Lord Alden. It is the one thing I never lost. I did not mean to imply otherwise, he said quickly. On the contrary, I believe it is the heart of who you are. That is why I have a proposal. She straightened almost imperceptibly. A proposal? Yes. He took a breath. As you know, I have holdings in York, Bath, and along the coast. For some time, I have been working on establishing a series of schools, not merely for boys of privilege, but for girls of modest means. I have met reformers in Vienna, scholars in Paris. Everywhere, there is talk of progress. But here, in England, very little is done beyond talk. This is true, Eleanor said softly. He looked at her with steady intensity. I do not want to merely add my name to a list of charitable donors and call my conscience satisfied. I want to build something that lasts. For that, I need someone with vision and courage. Her breath caught. I need you, Miss Whitford, he finished quietly. Not as a figurehead. As a partner. The word hung between them. Partner. What sort of partnership? She asked, her voice careful. A very practical one, at first, he said. I provide funding, access, protection. You shape the curriculum, train the teachers, direct the purpose. Your essays have already laid the philosophy. Together, we could give it stone and mortar. It was everything she had once dreamed of doing. And yet, something in his tone hinted at more. And beyond at first? She asked gently. His gaze softened. Beyond that, he said, I would hope to court your personal consideration, not with the arrogance of assuming it, but with the hope of earning it. Her heart thudded once sharp, disoriented. Lord Alden. He leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on his knees, his voice low and sincere. You have been offered miseries in the name of love, he said. I would offer you respect in the name of partnership. You have been silenced in the name of propriety. I would amplify your voice. You have been made to feel small in rooms where men decided your fate. I would sit beside you while you write theirs. Her throat tightened. You scarcely know me, she whispered. He smiled faintly. I know enough. I know your mind, through your writing. I know your resilience, through the whispers I've heard, and the grace with which you walk through rooms that once devoured you. The rest, I would be honored to spend my life discovering. She stood abruptly, moving to the window. Outside, London moved on carriages, street vendors, gas lamps flickering in the gray. Inside, her life seemed to tilt on a hinge. With her back still to him, she said, Do you know what they called me, Lord Alden, when I left London? Yes, he said quietly. I've heard some of it. Spinster, burden, embarrassment. She gave a brittle laugh. They predicted I would grow bitter, invisible, shrinking. With each year I remained unmarried. He waited. I did not. She continued. I grew into myself instead. I built a life that did not answer to their cruelty. To attach that life now to a man, any man. Her voice thinned. It terrifies me. Number this. Number this. He rose, but did not move closer than a few respectful steps. I will not pretend I can erase that fear, he said. But I can promise this. I will never ask you to diminish yourself to fit beside me. I ask to stand in awe of you, not over you. Tears pricked hotly behind her eyes. He continued softly. You deserve a life where love is not a wound, but a shelter. If that life is meant to be lived alone, I will respect it. If that life is meant to be lived in partnership, I would ask you to consider me. She turned then, slowly. Is this, she swallowed, is this a proposal of marriage? No, he said. Not yet. I will not presume so quickly. It is a proposal of possibility, of shared work, of time. If, in that time, affection deepens, I would be a fool not to hope. But I will not rush you, and I will not press where I am not wanted. She studied him. Here stood a man offering her not a title, but steadiness. Not a grand gesture, but a life. Not torment, but tenderness. And somewhere, 3 streets away, another man with a title higher than any in the room was likely pacing his study. Torn to pieces by regret he'd taken too long to act upon. She closed her eyes briefly. Lord Alden, she began. Sebastian, he said quietly. If you wish. The intimacy of his given name sent a tremor through her. Sebastian, she tried, the word tasting unfamiliar and warm. You have given me something I never expected to have again. What is that? He asked. Choice, she said. You have given me choice. He exhaled, relief and something like reverence flickering across his face. Then I ask only that you use it for yourself, he replied. Not for your stepmother. Not for the ton. Not even for other men who once held your heart. Only for you. She knew what he did not say. Not even for the Duke. Her fingers curled against her skirt. I cannot answer you today, she said finally. I would not trust an answer given so quickly, he replied gently. Take all the time you need. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Miss Whitford. Yes? If the Duke of Everleigh should attempt to win his way back into your good graces. His tone remained calm, but his jaw tightened. Do not allow him to do it with apologies alone. Make him build something with you, or let him go. Her heart stumbled. She did not respond. He bowed. Until tomorrow, he said softly. And then he was gone. Eleanor stood alone in the drawing room, the quiet pressing around her like a question. She had once believed love meant choosing the man who set her heart on fire. Now, standing at 40, wiser and wounded but unbroken, she realized something far more complex. Love was not only about who made her heart race, it was about who helped her become more fully herself. And, for the first time in 17 years, she truly had a choice between safe respect or dangerous, broken, aching love that demanded redemption, her past or her future. End of Chapter 7, Micro Cliffhanger. The rival's offer is real. Partnership, respect, and shared purpose versus a Duke with nothing but regret and unresolved love. Eleanor finally has what she was never given at 23. A choice that belongs entirely to her. Chapter 8. Heroes Humbling. The Duke of Everleigh had never been this nervous. Not when he inherited his title at 19. Not when facing Parliament. Not during duels, or negotiations, or battles of influence. No, those challenges paled beside the terror of losing Eleanor Whitford again. For the past 3 days, she had barely spoken to him. Not out of cruelty, she was above cruelty. But silence from Eleanor was far more punishing than any insult. He had seen her walking through Hyde Park with Lord Alden. He had seen her carriage leaving Lady Farnsworth's estate after a meeting regarding her father's land. He had watched her, from a distance, stand before an audience of intellectuals and speak with such fire that half the room forgot she was a woman they'd once dismissed. He watched everything, but he was no longer part of her world. Not unless he fought his way back into it. Tonight's event, the charity assembly at Everleigh House, would be his chance. It was hosted every year by the dukedom. Adrian had always hated these gatherings, but tonight he would use it for something he had once sworn he would never do. He would lower himself. He would humble himself. He would risk humiliation before the entire aristocracy, to show Eleanor she was worth more than his pride. Everleigh House gleamed with candlelit splendor, but the Duke felt none of its warmth. He stood near the ballroom entrance, hands clasped behind his back, posture tense as a bowstring. Every so often he checked the door. Every so often he wondered if she would come at all. His steward approached hesitantly. "Your Grace, shall we begin the introductions?" "Not yet," Adrian murmured. "We wait." "For whom, sir?" Adrian didn't answer. He didn't need to. When Eleanor finally arrived, the air changed. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. A hush rippled through the ballroom like wind passing over an open flame. She wore a gown of deep sapphire, simple, elegant, but breathtaking against her dark hair. At 40, she possessed a grace that eclipsed every glittering young debutante in the room. Beside her stood Lord Alden, handsome and composed, offering his arm with natural familiarity. The Duke's heart clenched. He approached slowly, the crowd parting instinctively. "Miss Whitford," he said softly when he reached her. "Lord Alden." "Your Grace," Alden replied with polite restraint. Eleanor inclined her head. "Your Grace." Her tone was civil, distant, unshakable. Adrian swallowed. "Would you permit me to speak with you?" he asked. Lord Alden glanced at Eleanor, waiting for her cue. She held the Duke's gaze for a long, unreadable moment. Then, finally, "Very well." She released Alden's arm. Adrian gestured toward a quieter alcove draped in velvet. She followed without a word. The Duke's pulse thundered. This was it. "Eleanor," he began, voice low and unsteady. "Before you say anything, allow me to speak fully, as I should have spoken 17 years ago." She folded her hands before her. "I am listening." He inhaled sharply. "First," he said, eyes holding hers, "I owe you the apology of a lifetime." Her jaw tightened, but she did not interrupt. He continued, "I wronged you then with my silence. I wronged you again last week with my hesitation. I failed you in every way. A man can fail a woman." He caught himself. She did not save him. He pressed on. "You were humiliated because of lies told about you. You were cast out of your home. You endured cruelty you did not deserve. And God help me, I let it happen." Her lips quivered slightly, but she remained stone still. Adrian's voice roughened. "I thought silence would protect you from greater harm. I thought keeping my distance would spare you. But all it did was leave you to suffer alone." He stepped closer, carefully, cautiously. "And I have lived with that choice every day." Her breath hitched, barely audible. "I kept every letter I wrote to you," he confessed. "Every apology I was too much a coward to send. I read every article about your work. I funded projects without letting you know. I watched your life from afar, because I had forfeited any right to stand in it." Her lashes fluttered. "I have loved you," he whispered finally, painfully, humbly, "for far longer than you could ever imagine." Her head snapped up, but he didn't stop. "I loved you when you were 23 and fearless. I loved you when you walked away from London with nothing but dignity. I loved you when you returned, stronger than any of them deserved to witness." Emotion burned in his voice, raw and unvarnished. "But love means nothing," he said, "if all it does is hurt you." He fell to one knee, not theatrically, not confidently, but with the solemnity of a man offering his pride on an altar. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Fans stilled. Even the violins faltered. The Duke of Everleigh, cold, unreachable, untouchable, was kneeling before a 40-year-old unmarried woman the ton liked to mock. Eleanor's eyes widened, breath trembling. "Audrey, your Grace," she whispered, shaken. "Stand up. This is unnecessary." "No," he said, voice fierce in its vulnerability. "It is long overdue." He bowed his head. "I do not ask for forgiveness tonight. I do not deserve it. I ask only for the chance to prove through action that I am no longer the man who broke your trust." Eleanor's throat closed. This was not the Duke society knew. This was not the man who once let her burn alone. This was a man stripped of armor, a man cracked open by regret, a man terrified of losing her to a rival who had done everything right. "Eleanor," he said softly, still kneeling, "if you choose Lord Alden, I will step aside. I will wish you happiness without interference. But if there is even the smallest corner of your heart that still believes in me," his voice faltered, "then let me rebuild every piece I shattered." Silence engulfed them. The entire ballroom watched, breathless. Eleanor stood motionless, her heart a storm she could no longer control. Finally, after a long, agonizing moment, she spoke. "Adrian," she whispered, the name soft but steady. "Stand." His breath shook as he rose, slowly, reverently. Their eyes met. "You have said what you needed to say," she murmured. "But words, however honest, are only the beginning." He nodded, accepting the weight of her terms. "I will prove myself," he vowed. "You will have to," she replied. "Because if you fail me again, I will not break. I will simply walk away." He bowed his head. "I understand." She turned slightly, needing space to steady herself, but she stopped when he spoke once more. "One more truth," he said quietly. "I do not fear losing my reputation. I do not fear the ton. I fear only losing you." Her breath hitched. Before she could reply, Lord Alden approached from across the room, calm but watchful. Eleanor looked between the two men. One offered stability. The other offered redemption. For the first time in her life, they waited on her. Her choice, her power, her future, and the next chapter would decide everything. End of Chapter 8, micro cliffhanger. The Duke has publicly humbled himself. Eleanor is shaken. Lord Alden watches. And society has now seen everything: the humiliation, the proposal of redemption, and her power over both men. Chapter 9, emotional climax. The day of the public hearing arrived with the kind of winter sky that seemed suspended between storm and sunlight, fitting, Eleanor thought, for a day that could either crack her world apart or stitch it back together. The Committee of Land Arbitration met in the Royal Institute. A grand hall of carved oak panels, marble staircases, and rows of benches filled with London's elite. They had all gathered not for justice, but for spectacle. At the center of the room stood a long table where claimants were meant to speak. Eleanor Whitford was the only woman present. Lady Catriona Whitford swept in moments later, draped in smugness and silver satin. Lavinia flanked her, wearing triumph like jewelry. The murmurs began immediately. "Poor thing, she cannot expect to win. At her age, why fight? Simply let the stepmother take the property. She should be grateful anyone even remembers her name." Eleanor inhaled slowly. She expected cruelty. What she did not expect was the man who entered next, the Duke of Everleigh. He did not enter as a spectator. He did not hide behind protocol. He stepped into the hall as if the entire outcome of this day mattered to him and only him. And when his eyes found hers, she felt the impact like a pulse of lightning. Lord Alden arrived soon after, composed, elegant, offering her a reassuring nod that grounded her far more than she expected. Two men, both powerful, both watching her. But the choice today was not between them. The choice was who she would become in front of all of London. The hearing began. Catriona's solicitor droned on for nearly 20 minutes, outlining his version of events. Lies poured like honey. That Eleanor's father intended the land for Catriona. That Eleanor had abandoned her family. That she was emotionally unfit to manage the property. Soft titters of condescension rippled across the hall. Eleanor felt her heart beat slow, not with fear, but with clarity. When the committee called her name, she rose. The hall grew silent. Her steps were steady, elegant, certain, as she crossed to the center of the room. The blue of her gown caught the light and made her look like she carried the sea with her. She placed her hands lightly on the table. No tremor, no hesitation. "Miss Eleanor Whitford," the chairman announced, "you may speak." For a moment, she let the silence gather around her. Then she lifted her chin. "My father," she began, her voice carrying without strain, "was a man of simple greatness. He valued honesty, education, and dignity. He raised me to believe that a woman's worth was not measured by her proximity to a husband, but by her integrity." A ripple moved through the room. Catriona's eyes narrowed. Eleanor continued, "When he fell ill, he confided in me. He wished the coastal property to remain, as it was a place of study, of quiet, of natural beauty, a refuge, a place he hoped I would one day use for my work with young women's education." Gasps, whispers. Lady Farnsworth smiled proudly from the second row. "But after his death," Eleanor said, voice strengthening, "I was expelled from my own home. My belongings were sold. Letters he left for me were destroyed, and lies were spread through society so effectively that I had no choice but to leave London." Now the room truly listened. "Those lies did not ruin me," she said quietly. "They revealed the truth about those who told them." Catriona stiffened like a struck animal. Eleanor reached into her satchel and placed a stack of letters, documents, and her father's journal entries onto the table. "These," she said, "are records authenticated by Lord Westmere and by the Royal Archivist that prove my father's intentions. They prove deceit. They prove theft." The committee leaned forward. Catriona's face blanched. Eleanor allowed the silence to swell before she spoke again. "But this hearing is not merely about property." She turned, addressing the room itself. "It is about the cruelty this city allows toward women who do not fit its expectations. A hush, a collective inhalation." She was not pleading for sympathy. She was accusing society itself. "You called me a spinster," she said. "Unwanted. Failed. You mocked me for living my life without the validation of a man." The words struck like a bell. Lord Alden watched her with awe. The Duke watched her with devotion. The Tun watched her with discomfort. "But I stand before you today," she said, "as a woman who has built a life of purpose, of work, of meaning, without your approval." A murmur surged. Shock, admiration, fear. Eleanor held up the final document. "This land is legally mine. But even if it were not, I would still fight for it. Not for inheritance, but for every woman who has been silenced, dismissed, or diminished by people who fear her strength." Now the room no longer whispered. They listened, truly listened. Her voice softened. "I am 40, unmarried, and deeply proud of the woman I have become." It was the hardest, truest sentence she had ever spoken. She stepped back from the table. "I request not your pity," she said, "but your justice." The committee sat motionless. Then the chairman cleared his throat, visibly shaken. "This is compelling evidence, Miss Whitford. We will recess for deliberation." As he struck the gavel, the hall erupted into hushed, frantic murmurs. Eleanor exhaled shakily. It was done. She had spoken her truth, and they could never unhear it. But the true climax came not from the committee. It came from Catriona. "You insolent little..." Catriona stormed forward, face blotched with fury. "How dare you humiliate me, humiliate this family in front of all of London?" Eleanor did not move. Lavinia hissed, "You've ruined yourself again. Look at them, they're laughing at you." But they weren't. They were watching Catriona unravel. The Duke stepped in instinctively, placing himself between Eleanor and her stepmother with lethal calm. "You will not speak to her that way," Adrian said softly. Too softly. The kind of softness that masked a storm. Catriona let out a shrill laugh. "Of course you would slither forward. You always wanted her, wanted the girl who couldn't even keep a man's interest." Lord Alden stepped forward now, voice slicing the air. "Enough." Silence slammed down. Catriona faltered. Adrian's eyes sharpened cold steel, drowning in fury. "Lady Whitford," the Duke said, "your malice has been tolerated for far too long. Today you exposed yourself, not Eleanor, Catriona sputtered. "This is outrageous." "No," Eleanor said softly, stepping forward. "This is accountability." Catriona froze. Eleanor held her gaze, not cruel, not triumphant, simply free. "I am not afraid of you anymore," she said. Catriona blanched, the words hitting their mark like a shard of glass. For the first time in her life, Eleanor saw something in her stepmother's eyes she had never seen before. Fear, not of scandal, of irrelevance. Because tonight, Eleanor had reclaimed everything Catriona tried to steal. Her voice, her dignity, her power, and Catriona had nothing left to take. When the committee returned, the verdict was swift. "The coastal property legally belongs to Miss Eleanor Whitford," the chairman declared. "Lady Catriona Whitford is hereby barred from further claim or sale." Applause broke out. Real applause. Not polite. Not forced. Moved. Eleanor's breath left her in a trembling rush. Adrian closed his eyes for one heartbeat, relief and pride washing over him. Lord Alden bowed his head, a rare smile softening his features. Eleanor stood still, absorbing it all. She had not just won land. She had won back her life. As the hall emptied, people approached her one by one, offering congratulations, respect, invitations she had waited decades to receive. It was overwhelming, almost unreal. She needed a moment alone. She turned toward a quiet colonnade, only to find both Adrian and Alden waiting there, as if drawn to her gravity. Both men stepped forward at the same time. And Eleanor, 40, unmarried, unbroken, stood between two men who wanted her, for her mind, her fire, her strength, her soul. Adrian spoke first, voice aching with reverence. "You were extraordinary." Lord Alden nodded. "You were magnificent." Eleanor's heart pounded. For the first time in her entire life, she felt not torn, but chosen. By herself, by her courage, by her truth. The world had mocked her for being single at 40. But now, London bowed its head to her. She inhaled deeply, and spoke a quiet truth that changed everything. "I will not be defined by any of you," she whispered. Not anymore. The next chapter would decide which man, if any, she'd let into the future she was finally free to build. End of chapter 9. Micro cliffhanger. Eleanor triumphs publicly. The villains fall. The Duke and rival both stand in awe, and Eleanor holds all the power as she faces the final decision of the story. Chapter 10. Slow burn resolution. The Royal Institute Hall emptied slowly, like a long-held breath releasing. For Eleanor, the world felt strangely weightless. Victory, real, undeniable victory, settled over her shoulders like a cloak woven from light. She stepped out into the crisp dusk air, needing space. The sky burned in streaks of gold and rose, as though the horizon itself bowed in quiet applause. She moved toward the courtyard fountain, seeking stillness, not celebration. Of course, stillness was impossible tonight. Footsteps approached, measured, steady, purposeful. She didn't turn. She knew who it was. "Eleanor," Adrian said softly. "May I join you?" She hesitated, then nodded once. He stood beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a moment, neither spoke. The water's soft trickle filled the silence. "You were extraordinary today," he said, voice low. "I have never seen anything so brave." She tucked her hands together. "I did what needed to be done." "No," he corrected quietly. "You did what no one else would have dared." Eleanor studied the reflection of the winter sky in the water. "You weren't the only one watching," she murmured. His jaw tightened. He knew she meant Lord Alden. "Yes," he said, voice pained. "But I was the one who should have stood beside you years ago. And today, I finally saw what my silence cost you." She glanced at him. "And what did it cost you?" "Adrian?" His eyes softened with a grief that had nowhere left to hide. "Everything," he whispered. The word hung between them, a confession 17 years overdue. She looked away quickly before the warmth in her chest could betray her. "Pain alone does not redeem a man," she said gently. "I know," he replied. She inhaled. "And I cannot choose a future built on apologies. I would never ask you to." A long pause stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Finally, she faced him fully. "Adrian, she said plainly. If you want a place in my life, you must understand who I am now. I do, he whispered. No, she said softly but firmly. You understand who I was. A girl who trusted too easily. A girl who mistook silence for restraint, and restraint for affection. His breath shook. I am not that girl anymore, she continued. I am a woman who has built herself from the wreckage you helped create. I have purpose, work, dreams that existed long before you bowed in that ballroom. I know, he said again, quieter. And if you want the privilege, she emphasized the word, of being near me, then you must respect every part of the life I built without you. Adrian closed his eyes. I do, I will. You must stand beside my work, she said. Not overshadow it, not claim it, not soften it to fit society. You must support it exactly as it is. I would never stand in your way. He replied, voice earnest and raw. Only beside you, or behind you, if that is what you need. Her breath caught. She studied him, his posture stripped of arrogance, his gaze free of entitlement, his pride bowed, but not broken. Then, understand this, she said softly. If I choose you, I do so as an equal, a partner, a woman who will not bend herself smaller to fit your shadow. You should never be small, he whispered, and never for me. Their eyes held. It was not longing, not yet. It was recognition. She looked down at the water. And Lord Alden? She asked. His throat tightened. If you choose him, he will deserve you, and I will carry the loss silently, as I have carried everything else. The honesty in his voice, painful, humble, shook something deep inside her, but she did not let it sway her. You do not win me by suffering, she said gently. You win me by changing. He nodded, swallowing hard. I intend to. She turned toward the Institute's stone steps, leaving the fountain's soft glow behind. Adrian, she said softly, not looking back. Yes, if you want to be part of my future, start by helping me build something that serves others, not just yourself. A flicker of hope lit his face. Name it. There will be a school, she said, for girls who were never offered the opportunities I had to fight for. I will fund all of it, he said without hesitation. She lifted a hand. No, you will support it, not own it. The vision and leadership will be mine. He nodded, humbled. As it should be. And, she said, you will speak publicly of what happened. Not in detail, not with spectacle, but with honesty. You will acknowledge not my innocence, but your mistake. His breath hitched. If that is what it takes, I will do it. Her gaze, searching his face, softened just slightly. Words are easy, she murmured. I know, he whispered. That is why I will follow them with action. The faintest smile touched the corner of her lips. Then we will start there, she said. Not with love, not even with forgiveness, with work, with partnership, with change. He bowed his head. I accept your terms. She stepped past him, pausing only once before leaving the courtyard. Adrian, she said softly. He turned instantly. I am not promising you my heart, she said. I am promising you a chance. He exhaled a breath that sounded like prayer. That is more than I deserve, he murmured. She walked toward the carriage lane, where Lord Alden waited at a polite distance. Adrian watched her go, not possessively, not desperately, but respectfully. And for the first time in 17 years, Eleanor felt the Duke of Everleigh falling in love with her, not as a ghost of his past, but as the woman she had become. Lord Alden stepped forward as she approached. Are you well? He asked, voice warm, steady. Yes, she said softly. I am. More than well. He studied her expression, understanding far more than she said aloud. You spoke with him. I did. And he knows the terms. Lord Alden's lips curved. You gave him rules, he said. She smiled faintly. He will try, and I, Alden said gently, will try in my own way. She looked at him. 2 men, 2 futures, no pressure, no desperation, only choice. Her choice, and for the first time in her life, she was ready to make it slowly, deliberately, with no fear. As they walked together toward her carriage, Lord Alden offered his arm not as a suitor staking claim, but as a friend offering respect. She took it. Behind them, in the courtyard shadows, the Duke watched not with jealousy, but with resolve. He had lost her once through silence. He would not lose her again through inaction. Tomorrow, the work would begin. End of Chapter 10. Micro cliffhanger. Eleanor sets conditions for any future partnership. Adrian accepts them. Lord Alden remains a steady alternative. For the first time, Eleanor stands not at the mercy of any man but at the center of her own life. Chapter 11. Epilogue. Months later. Spring arrived gently that year. Not in a burst of color but in subtle shifts, buds forming on branches, warmer breezes whispering through London's narrow streets, and the quiet hum of something new beginning. The Whitford School for Girls opened on a soft April morning. It stood 3 stories tall on the edge of Bloomsbury, built from pale stone with wide windows that allowed sunlight to flood the classrooms. The brass plaque beside the door read, "The Whitford Institute, for the Education and Advancement of Young Women." On opening day, carriages lined the street. Families gathered. Scholars from Lady Farnsworth's salon arrived to give opening remarks. Lord Alden stood near the entrance, greeting guests with warm composure. Adrian, Duke of Everley, stood beside him. No rivalry in his posture, only shared pride. Inside, Eleanor moved quietly between rooms, ensuring everything was perfect, the chalk neatly arranged, the reading corner stocked with well-loved books, the fresh bouquets placed in vases near the windows. She wore a pale lavender gown, her hair swept loosely up, a simple locket resting just above her heart. She looked content, she looked sure. She looked like a woman who had rebuilt her life piece by piece. The first students arrived, girls aged 8 to 16, some shy, some curious, all carrying hope in their eyes. Eleanor knelt beside the youngest child, helping her place her slate on the desk. "You belong here," she said softly. The girl nodded, smiling. When Eleanor stood, she noticed Adrian watching her from the doorway. The Duke's expression was soft with something like awe. "May I steal a moment?" he asked. She walked toward him, closing the door gently behind her. "Of course," she said. "You've earned many." They stepped into the courtyard, where lilac trees bloomed against the walls. A small bench sat beneath them, carved from oak, simple and beautiful. Adrian gestured toward it. "Lord Westmere arranged for this to be placed here. He said your father would have wanted you to have a place to sit beneath trees." Her throat tightened. "It's lovely." A comfortable silence settled between them, no tension now, only something warm, steady, and becoming familiar. "You've changed everything," Adrian said quietly. "The school?" she asked. "No." He shook his head. "Me." She looked at him carefully. He truly had changed. He no longer approached her like a man begging for redemption. He approached her like a man ready to earn a place beside her. "How have you been?" she asked softly. "Honest," he said. "More than I have ever been. With myself, with others." "And the statement?" she asked. He nodded. "It was published last week. An open letter, written by the Duke of Everley, acknowledging that years ago he failed to protect a young woman from malicious rumor, not because she was at fault, but because he lacked the courage to speak truth. It was powerful, it was humble, and it was unprecedented. You did not need to attach your name to it," Eleanor said. "I did," he replied, "because the silence that once hurt you was mine. And it was mine to break." She felt something soften, slowly and deeply, in her chest. "And how do you feel now?" she asked. "Free," he said, "and hopeful." Her lips curved slightly. "Hopeful for what?" Adrian's breath caught. "For the possibility," he said, "that your heart may one day find room for me, not as the man I was, but as the man I am trying to become." She looked away, the breeze playing gently with the strands of her hair. "Adrian," she said softly, "you asked me for a chance, not a promise. I remember, and you have kept every word you offered since that day. I will keep the rest as well," he said. She turned toward him fully now. Her voice was steady, warm, certain. I am still learning how to trust the world again, how to trust myself again. But I find that I look forward to your presence, your conversation, your sincerity. Her eyes met his. I do not know what our future looks like, but I know that I want you in it. His breath left him like a prayer released. Eleanor, not as a man who completes me, she said. I am already whole. But as a man who walks beside me. Do you understand? I do, he whispered. She extended her hand. He took it with reverence. No claim, no triumph, only respect. They stood together beneath the lilac trees, the courtyard quiet around them. After a moment, Eleanor spoke softly, her voice brushing the spring air. I used to believe my life was defined by what I lost. Now, I see it as defined by what I built. Adrian's eyes softened, filled with emotion he no longer tried to hide. He lifted her hand gently, pressing a quiet kiss to her knuckles. And I, he whispered, am defined not by the man I was, but by the man your strength has allowed me to become. Their hands remained intertwined, not as a promise sealed, but as a future gently opening. Not rushed, not desperate, not dependent. Two lives, side by side, growing forward. End of story. A slow burn, mature, deeply earned ending, rooted in equality, autonomy, and emotional redemption.